Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Writing in the Dark. I'm Tim Wagner, writer of horror, dark fantasy, and media tie-ins, a creative writing professor for 30 years now or more. Today, what I want to talk to you about is my formula for writing horror short stories. It's a simple little formula, and it's one that maybe you can use too and see if it works for you. First, let me tell you about a book I got coming out this week. It's called Lord of the Feast. It's my latest horror novel from Flame Tree Press. It's about a family that tried to make their own god 20 years ago. It didn't work too well. They had to just destroy the god as best they could and separate its pieces. And each family member kind of took the pieces in different places and hoped that one day they'd be able to reassemble it and finally get it right. That day has finally come. Some family members want it to happen, other ones want to try to stop it. And that is what that's about. So it's coming out on Tuesday. What's today's date? The 14th. So the 16th, April 16th. Okay, so this is the Wagner Horror Fiction Formula. It's an update of a blog post I made a long time ago. So I got a lot of stuff written down here about it. So I've served as a mentor for the Horror Writers Association for a while now. And one of my current mentees, at least current when I wrote this originally, sent me an email to ask where I get my ideas for stories. She told me about a time in third grade when she was afraid of the school restrooms. Something about it, something about them just seemed wrong to her for whatever reasons. But she wasn't sure how to use that experience to fuel a story. And I never had a fear like that, so I couldn't really, draw on it. I'm not afraid of restrooms. But the only way I could think to explain my process to her was to literally work through the story generating process using the basic idea she told me about as if it was my idea that I wanted to turn into a finished story. And after I sent my reply to her, it occurred to me that the other people, like you, I hope, might find it useful. So I'm going to read to you what I said to her. So this is the email I sent her. Over the years, I've trained myself to look for horror story ideas. If I see or hear or read anything that strikes me as odd or strange, I write a note to myself about it, usually on the Notepad app on my phone. I write down phrases and images that I encounter while reading and watching TV, movies that seem weird too. Then, when it's time to write a story, I go through my idea list and pick two or three items I like, but which aren't necessarily related. Sometimes I might have a cool sounding phrase in my idea list that might make a good title. I then try to connect these ideas to some kind of experience I've had so I can give the story an emotional core. I don't follow all the specific details of my experience, though. I don't write autobiography. I change them as needed to fit the story, but the emotional core is still there. It's something I learned in acting class. I started off college as an acting major before I switched to theater education with a concentration on English for my undergrad. And they taught us that you can use an emotion from your life to inform a character, inform a scene, even if it's not exactly the same stuff. Like you can use your memory of sadness to create sadness for a character, even if the circumstances are different. So I was never afraid of a bathroom at school, but let's pretend I was. I did have an experience in junior high where two bullies waited in the restroom for me, and one punched me in the stomach, but not too hard. They did this 2 days in a row, and for whatever reasons, they never bothered me after that. I guess I just didn't react the way they hoped. So I could use that experience to give the haunted bathroom story an emotional core. Turn pages here. Here we go. Maybe I'll create an adult character who encounters the same young bullies that bothered him in junior high in a restroom where he works. The kids haven't aged a day, and each time they bully him, their actions are more violent. One of the phrases on my current idea list is wolves in the woods. I have no idea where these things come from. I just write them down and forget their origin. But that could make a cool title for the story because the bullies are like wolves hiding in the woods waiting to pounce on a victim. Once I have these things to work with, I think about my character, who he is, where he works, what's going on in his life that might be causing him to relive the humiliating experience from junior high, only it's so much worse now. So I asked myself then, what would he do? The first encounter with the bullies would be unexpected, and the character might think he hallucinated or is going crazy. He might try to forget about the experience, but then it happens again. After the second time, what does he do? Avoid the bathroom at work? See a therapist? Do the bullies start harassing him in other places? Does his therapist suggest he confront the bullies in the hope that their attacks will end? I like to give my stories an unexpected ending that takes the basic concept theme of the story and turns it on its head. So during the last confrontation with the bullies, they taunt him, or character, to the point where he attacks them and beats them up severely. The bullies, all beaten and bloody, say that he's just like them. He always was. He just never had the courage to lash out. The bullies have come to bring out the bully in him. In their minds, they're doing him a favor. The bullies fade away then, but I'd have traces of their blood remain in the bathroom to make the reader wonder if they were real or not. The main character leaves the bathroom and he becomes a bully finally. So he's probably bullying people at work. Maybe he had like a work problem of some sort he didn't know how to handle, and he handles it through being bullying right at the end. So go back to the beginning and have the character be humiliated by someone at work. A boss who berates him, a coworker who's taking credit for something he did, maybe somebody who rejected him romantically. Or maybe I'd have all three of those people humiliate him. Then at the end, because he's now a bully, one who's killed two maybe real, maybe not real kids, he's going to go kill the people at work who humiliated him. And I might not show that in a short story. I might just imply it because the readers could imagine it just fine. As I start drafting the story, I might change any of these story elements if better ideas occur to me. But once I have a story plotted out this far, I usually don't make any huge changes when I write it. As I write the story, I focus on the main character's thoughts and feelings, trying to show his fear and his slowly rising anger at the bullies to set up the ending. And I try to create an atmosphere of dread and suspense throughout. To start it off strong, I begin the story with the last encounter with the bullies in progress. Then I flash back to the day when the main character was humiliated by his coworkers. And I'd show a flash or two of anger that he doesn't act on at that time. Then I'd write the first encounter with the bullies. I'd show the reader that he was bullied by these same two kids in junior high, maybe by having him check an old yearbook to make sure it's them. To make things weirder, I'd have him check social media and discover that two bullies are alive and they're adults. I might have him even email one bully who apologizes for being a jerk in school to him. I'd intercut his investigation of the bullies' current lives with one or two more encounters with the young bullies. Current encounters at his workplace, not back when he was a kid. At this point, I probably wouldn't want to add any more characters, so I drop the therapist character and have the adult bully write something in his email about the importance of confronting one's past, etc. That would motivate the main character to have one last confrontation with the kid bullies. By this point, the story is caught up with the opening scene, and I'd finish it as I talked about above and end the story. So once I have enough elements for a short story, the main character, his humiliation at work, the bullies in the bathroom at work, the adult bullies in real life, I stop adding elements and do my best to create the story from the ones I have, fleshing them out and connecting them and making those connections tighter and stronger as I write. You got to make sure for a short story it doesn't spiral out of control. One of the ways is keeping the idea focused and only a few characters. So this is the end of the letter that I wrote to my mentee. I have no idea if any of this information helps, but it's a good description, explanation of where I get ideas and what I do with them to turn them into a finished story. So, to give you the formula, I would have like one kind of weird observation maybe that I take from my life or probably from my list on the notepad app on my phone. So this might be, I don't know, maybe I originally wrote down that I was in the restroom and I heard a noise, restroom at work, and nobody was there. And it reminded me of the time that those bullies bothered me in junior high. So that'd be one. One element from my life, I could go ahead, these kind of come together. I could go ahead and flesh out the bullies idea and maybe decide to go ahead and blend them, kid bullies of my current life, and then an emotional core. So the emotional core could be anger, could be humiliation, could be satisfaction at like getting back at childhood bullies. Um, that's probably enough. So one weird observation or just an observation, one element from my life, and then one emotional core. And those three things can be completely unrelated until you find a way to make them relate. I've found over the years that doing that kind of thing for short stories works great because you end up with ideas you wouldn't have come up with otherwise. And they're usually ideas that aren't cliche because those three things have never been put together before. Certainly not by you. Right. So hopefully the Wagner horror fiction formula is something you can use. Let me know if you do try it and it works out pretty well. Put a comment in the comment section. Maybe go to my website because there's contact tabs there. You can email me, let me know. I would love to know if it worked for you. Please subscribe, like all that good stuff if you can. And, good writing to all of you.